It's December the 6th, 2022, and our reading today in the book of Psalms is Psalm 76. In Judah, God is known. His name is great in Israel. His tent is in Salem, his dwelling place in Zion. There he broke the flashing arrows, the shields, and the swords, the weapons of war. You are resplendent with light, more majestic than mountains, rich with game. Valiant men lie plundered, they sleep their last sleep. Not one of the warriors can lift his hands. At your rebuke, O God of Jacob, both horse and chariot lie still. You alone are to be feared. Who can stand before you when you are angry? From heaven you pronounced judgment, and the land feared and was quiet. When you, O God, rose up to judge, to save all the afflicted of the land, surely your wrath against men brings you praise, and the survivors of your wrath are restrained. Make vows to the Lord your God and fulfill them. Let all the neighboring lands bring gifts to the one to be feared. He breaks the spirit of rulers. He's feared by the kings of the earth. Amen. Well, the opening verses of this unusual psalm, verses 1 to 3, they remind us of the special history and function of Israel in the purposes of God. This is the unique place, both geographically, but also in terms of the chosen people, going back to Abraham and so on. This is the unique place where God dwells, where God has chosen to reveal himself, and where he gives power and victory to his people. In Judah, God is known. His tent, his dwelling place, is in Zion. There he broke the flashing arrows, the shields and the swords, the weapons of war. We don't know precisely what this is referring to. This maybe is summing up a long history of how the Lord has provided for and protected and given power and victory again and again to his people over their enemies. Verses 4 to 7 continues in that vein. A revelation of his glory. Look at verse 7. You are resplendent with light, more majestic than mountains, rich with game. By the way, that reference to game there hints at a theme running under the surface of this psalm. It doesn't come out particularly well in the English translation, but the idea of God as an awesome lion who tracks down his enemies and who roars and is indeed awesome. Verse 4. And he wants to share that victory, that power, like the lion, the king of the jungle, or of the plains in Africa, or whatever image you want to think of, how he protects his family, his cubs, and protects them with his mighty power against all enemies. Verses 5 to 7. Valiant men lie plundered, these are the enemies. Verse 6, at your rebuke, O God of Jacob, both horse and chariot lie still, the idea of the lion roaring against our enemies. And then you alone are to be feared. Imagine standing face to face in an encounter with a lion. That might cause us to tremble. God, of course, is in a dimension of awesomeness and greatness and glory, far, far beyond. Verses 8 to 10, and we've seen this hinted at a number of times recently, that the way in which God reveals himself in, through, and for Israel is through judgment. Verse 8, from heaven you pronounced judgment, on this occasion on his enemies, their enemies, but also salvation. Verse 9, when you, O God, rose up to judge the enemies, to save all the afflicted of the land. Again, the land of Israel. So judgment and salvation, these are the twin basic elements of how God works, and when God works, what happens, and the revelation that he brings. And we see that all the way through the history of Israel. And then the final two verses about the impact that this should have and will have. First of all, on his people, verse 11a, make vows to the Lord your God and fulfill them. The Lord Yahweh, your God. Again, he's talking to the Jews here. If they've seen God provide, protect, give power, give victory like this, then of course they will be a grateful people. They will be a devoted people, making vows, as it says. But then the psalm ends rather interestingly and maybe a bit unexpectedly on the impact that all of this will have. Yes, it's happening, as it were, in Israel and for Israel. We might say today, God blessing us in the church, within the four walls almost of a church building. But it must not stay there, this blessing, this provision, this revelation of the glory and the power and the grace of God. Because here, look at the impact now on the Gentile outsiders. Let all the neighboring lands bring gifts to the one to be feared. There should be devotion, there should be commitment, there should be worship from the Gentile outsiders as well. Verse 12, he, God, breaks the spirit of rulers. The implication is in these distant lands. He is to be feared by the kings of the earth. From the ends of the earth, they will come to him. They will worship him, fear him. That's the idea of the word. Fear is worship. Does this ring any bells for you again as we think about the Christmas story, which is upon us in these days? It makes me think of the wise men, the Magi. They were outsiders. They were from the east. They weren't God's covenant people. In fact, in Matthew chapter 2, God's covenant people are really indifferent and callous and hard-hearted. They show no interest in the newborn king. But these men do. They travel from the east. And what is their response? Exactly like we've read in Psalm 76, the most famous verse in the story. Everybody knows it. Verse 11, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. Exactly what we've just read. Well, may that picture, may that prophecy of Psalm 76 be fulfilled in our day. Yes, there was a little fulfillment in Matthew chapter 2. There have been many fulfillments throughout the church age. May there be an even greater fulfillment this Christmas time of many outsiders bowing down and worshipping for the first time the newborn